Hey everybody, welcome to the Councilcast, episode 5. We've got some updates for you. I'm District Councillor Craig Reeves. I'm joined with District Councillor Charlie Homer. How you doing, Charlie?
I am very well. Sun is shining and we've got a heatwave incoming once again.
It's a bit close, isn't it? It is a bit close. Let's just kick things straight off. There's been a video. Rik Gannon, he's got 650,000 followers. He's well known for Netflix. He's well known on Channel 5 to do with property development. And he's got a little mini-series going around the towns, talking about basically how, I guess the premise is how rubbish they are. But I guess with our one, he did Evesham, it wasn't bad, really. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's some way to make some money, isn't it? I guess good for him. Maybe one day we can aspire to those lofty heights. But yeah, I mean, I think I just think it's just clickbaity stuff. I'm not trying to say that we don't obviously have a number of sort of, empty shops that we'd like to see back in use and everything else. But I think he got a number of facts wrong as well. I think just walking around a town saying close, it doesn't do anyone any favours, does it? Let's be honest.
Well, it doesn't. Well, let's start watching it. So this is Rik Gannon off his Facebook feed.
Come to Evesham because it's worse than Kidderminster. Well,
yeah, apparently a lot of people are saying Evesham's worse than Kidderminster. Anyway, he starts off on the top of the high street here, next to Wetherspoons, and he walks down and he actually gives it quite a good review, because he's saying actually it looks busy, there's lots of shops here. But the one thing that I think frustrated me is that every time he sees a closed shop, he points at it and goes, closed. That did get a little bit grating, especially when he was pointing at shops.
Yeah. That's pretty much what the whole series, though. Every episode he's done so far, it's just literally, it's got a little counter on the screen as well.
Closed. Closed. I mean, I wish I could get 650,000
well, don't we all?
That. Well, so you and I, Charlie, should go around the town and go, open.
Well, yeah. Because a number of the shops he said were closed were actually open, including Evesham Jewellers, which is closed on a Wednesday.
Yeah, sorry, can you say that again?
Open. Open. Magpies open. I mean, Magpies is a stalwart of our high street, for Christ's sake. I mean, everyone knows it's not closed. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're down Bridge Street now, and Frango's in the background there. Frango's up for sale, actually, interestingly.
Is it?
Anyone who's interested in buying Frango's. Now, obviously, at this point he's walking into the Riverside Shopping Centre, which is lots of closed shops in there. Yeah. Closed shops, not closed shops.
There, isn't it?
Now, obviously, we're all aware locally that Wychavon have purchased the space, are going to regenerate it and what have you. And it's been purposefully no shops in there for a long while, way before Wychavon purchased it. I mean, it was a bit of a joke, really, that Sheldon Bosley Knight were advertising that you could take on some of the space, because, I know people that actually inquired about it and basically just led down the garden path, like, yay, but no. Yeah, they were never intending to rent any of these spaces out. So for a lot of people that are saying, the rents were too high and that's why people were leaving and all that kind of good stuff, I don't think it was really the case. I just don't think they wanted to rent it out. I think that it was always due to be redeveloped in some way. I think gratefully with Wychavon, because I've always said this, Wychavon aren't just obligated to make a financially viable deal for the town. They have to invest in the well-being of where we live and the townspeople. And so I think with a local authority purchasing it, rather than just another developer or the same developer knocking it down and literally building just flats, because that would be the only financially viable thing. And if you look at all the South Worcestershire Development Plan stuff with the planning that we've had in the past as well, it could be very easy for a developer to potentially purchase it and just put a load of flats there and say, well, tilted balance, you haven't got a 5-year land supply, so therefore that's what it needs to be, and our arms would be, bent for it. So, I'm very grateful that the local authority have purchased it. At this point in the film, he's found the notice, the demolition notice, and he's reading it out here.
So they're saying here, look, to the demolition of the existing Riverside Shopping Centre. That's why. That's why they're all shut. So no one's going to come here if they're planning permission to turn it into something else. So yeah, what a shame.
Just answered his own question, then.
Closed.
Why is he still doing his counter?
Closed. I don't know what that is. It's closed anyway.
Closed.
Whatever it is. So that's closed.
It's moved down back down the high street now.
Oh, that's closed.
Bridge Street.
Closed. So we're going to walk over the bridge and over into the other side of town there. I don't know what it's called, just to see what the situation is on that side.
I mean,
So I was walking down to
level of
Port
local
Street.
knowledge is pretty poor, isn't it? Ultimately, walk to the other side. Just have a good Google Maps.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you'd have liked to think that he would have looked up on maybe some of the local social media groups and found out what was going on with the space.
It's nice. It's not what I expected. I mean, everyone was telling me that it's worse than the last place we came to. I don't think it is. I mean, to be fair, so far, I would come here shopping. Well, I certainly go into the town centre shopping because almost every shop is open, apart from the shopping centre itself. Let's have a little walk up the high street here. This international mini market on the corner.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've actually got some figures that I can pull up here. So at the last town planning community meeting that we had was back in May, we had some loose figures about our town centre vacancy numbers, and basically we have 273 spaces occupied. 2 were uncertain as to whether they were or not, and vacant spaces were 38, which is 11.9%. The national average is 12.4%. So actually, Evesham's vacant property in the town centre space falls a little below the national average there. So I think that's a good stat, because a lot of people just assume that we have in abundance a lot of vacant space. And I think what's important to recognise is that Evesham Town Centre is really quite large compared to a lot of the market towns. You know, we've got a number of very wide and long streets, from Port Street, Bridge Street, the High Street, through to Vine Street. And there's a lot of buildings and properties on there. And I think sometimes, because it's also spaced out, it just, you know, 1 or 2, 3 or 4 of these vacant spaces start to look more than they are, because of how widespread everything is.
Like, if you look at towns like Ulster and Pershore, they have a really clear sort of high street. It's really obvious where the centre of the town is. And with it, of course, we've got a high street and we've got a centre of the town. But what I mean is you're right. We've got Port Street, we've got the High Street, Bridge Street, and you know, commercial sort of, even the High Street is quite a long stretch of road if you go all the way up to the train station and stuff. And there's businesses all the way along there, not just sort of retail businesses, but offices as well. It's a big space. And I think the problem is with a lot of the vacant units that we do have, like you've just said, they are some of the bigger units, and those units are much bigger and they stand out. And you know, ultimately, those are the units that are always harder to let as well, because they need a bigger refit. Their business rates obviously come in on that, and you know, energy costs, all that sort of stuff. And just in general, it's unlikely these days that you need such big premises. It's just not how retail businesses work. Certainly because most of the people that we're looking to come into town now are small independents, not big major retailers.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. And where we're at here in the video, where it ends, is at the retail park opposite Tesco on the Worcester Road. And he mentions actually that these spaces, these out-of-town retail spaces, a lot of these retailers would typically be in the town, and we're seeing them here. Now, he hasn't gone to the Four Pools Industrial Estate or the, is it the Sinclair site, the one where TK Maxx is?
Yeah, that's where Sinclair, Sinclair's Yard used to be, so it's now Sinclair's Yard, whatever it's called.
And we've also got the Valley up at the Twyford as well, that has a number of shops. There's a lot of widespread retail in our town. And arguably, yeah, you know, these spaces have taken a lot of the town centre space. And I think we're in a bit of a real tightrope walk at the minute of what's going to attract footfall into the town, and how can we support independent businesses? Because I believe, you know, that independent businesses is the way forward, but obviously we need to draw people back into the town, to use those independent spaces, because it's all right to fill everything with independent shops, but if no one is coming from the town or from afar to use those independent shops, then they're obviously just going to suffer. And talking about suffering, we've had some rather sad news last week about a particular hospitality business in town. Charlie, do you want to mention what's news we had?
Stirrups, isn't it? Which is really sad, because they had a really unique offer, which people travelled far and wide to come to, and it was a vibrant, sort of independent and much celebrated business. But unfortunately, it is the headwinds which none of us can mitigate for. I think the feedback that we'd heard from them through some of the conversations was, you know, it's actually not footfall that's down. It's the fact that from the top and the bottom, we're just being squeezed, and it's making it harder to, well, make a profit and make a living essentially. And when you've got to it, it's a fairly big building, but it always looked on the weekends, it was always well occupied.
It
And
looked brilliant.
unfortunately, I think they said it in a
It
statement
was
didn't they,
brilliant.
about, it was brilliant. And the food was really quality. There's a number of times with like 2 young children when we couldn't go out, and I'd still be ordering on Uber Eats, the burgers and the pork bites and the other bits and pieces, because it was different. And that was the thing, that's what will be missed as well, is that it was a different offer. Don't get me wrong, like we're fortunate to have the number of businesses that we do, and the sort of the leisure businesses that offer different things too. But they were quite unique in what their positioning was, and it will be missed absolutely.
I think particularly at the time now where obviously the Riverside Shopping Centre has come to new ownership. There's a lot of plans ahead of that. It's a shame that wasn't a number of years ago, really, like 2 years ago, because obviously I think that we would have fixed the footfall problem.
I mean,
there is a footfall problem. I mean, actually, it does get busy, right?
Well, even with Rik Gannon then walking around, there was people walking in and out of the centre. And that kind of amazes me that people are still visiting that centre. I guess there's still a shop there and people want to shop there, and that's
the Riverside, that is, not the town as a whole.
Sorry, the Riverside, the Riverside, yeah. But people are still coming in and out of the shopping centre. But the thing that was really unique, or the story about Stirrups, the idea that they started off in like a horse box, during COVID. I remember like ordering some cocktails from or something that sort of came in like these sort of jam jars. It's just like, you just go back to COVID. It feels like it wasn't that long ago, but it does feel like a completely different time. I mean, it was a different time, but they then, they did so well on the back of that, or they were able to create that proposition that they knew that people wanted it. And that's the worst part of it. It's not even that people have voted with their feet and don't any longer want to go to a place like Stirrups. It's just that Stirrups are looking at the business model and say it doesn't work anymore. That is just tragic, because where do you go from there? I mean, I know you've got some really good stats, and I know the economic team at Wychavon will always have conversations with people. Wychavon is, I think, proactively pro-business. Like we want to support business. We've done really good and novel things. The Waitrose is a really good example of that in town. The Riverside, I think, is also a good example of that. We can always say we hoped it would have happened sooner. The reality is I think everyone wanted it to happen sooner, but unfortunately we were dealing with a tricky landlord, and it made those negotiations much more difficult, I guess, in terms of just in general trying to get it concluded sooner. But we have concluded it, and the demolition order's in, as that was highlighted in the video. But yeah, I think you can talk to it in more detail because you've got it in front of you. But the reality is that at Wychavon there are a number of things that we'll always try and do to support business one way or another. If you're facing a similar predicament, please reach out to me or Craig, or reach out to the council. There's absolutely no shame in that. We want to see a vibrant high street, and whatever we can do to support that, and within reason. And if they can't, there's no doubt that they would highlight where you could go to get some support or help. I'd always say, there's some really good forums out there. I think I know the Evesham Notice Board seem to have a really good sort of grouping of like local businesses, and I think sometimes if you're not part of that, being part of that can be a really good way of having that network. Yeah, realizing you're not alone, because there's no doubt being a sole trader is, especially at this moment in time, is tricky. And
it's all about networking, who you know, isn't it, and connecting with other people. And as you say, Evesham Notice Board do a great job of putting on those events and getting people to them.
I think the other thing as well is what would it, let's change this proposition. How much better would it be if somebody would walk around and, we're just speaking about this, and actually saying, look, this shop's open. Look at what this shop is. Because in the video, he walks past Nostalgia and he says, open, yeah. And he says, look, it's heaving. And again, Nostalgia have come with they've come with a new sort of proposition, a new offer. So it's a really nice place to go and sit. It's decorated really nicely, and there's a number of really nice independent cafes and eateries in town. I think
what's important with that as well is that those new offerings that we've seen are relatively, in terms of square footage, quite small, and they probably fit, and make an assumption here, under the business rates threshold for hospitality. Whereas obviously the likes of Stirrups being quite a large offering would have probably paid quite substantial business rates. But I think it's important to also highlight here that Wychavon, your local authority, do not set business rates. They collect them. and because a lot of people will say, oh, the council set the rent too high or the rates were too high. Well, rent generally is privately set by the private owner of the building, and as rates are set nationally as well, whereas
and past the national government. We're the collecting agency, essentially. I know there's some, in a circular way, some of it comes back, but that's not the point of collecting it. We're literally just the authority that collects the business rates, and then it gets paid to central government.
I mean, let's just look at some of the things that are on offer with Wychavon then currently. We've got a growth fund at the moment. So it's based on match funding. So if you're a startup, an SME, you can have a grant between £500 to £2,000. I mean, obviously there's a lot of details that you need to look into. So go onto the wychavon.gov.uk/business/funding and support and look at all of the categories and how you might fit into any of those. The growth fund is based on obviously growth. It's about how can you provide another service? How can you buy something that's going to help your business and maybe
how you
bring
can scale your business, I think.
Scale it and bring in other people, make it an employment scenario.
Yeah. There was a really good example of somebody that just was able to upgrade through the support of this, was able to upgrade their 3D printer and just managed to scale their business, enormously. But having that capital available to the way they were operating was almost impossible. But that sort of small bit of help made a huge difference.
All about growth, all about getting more employment, and obviously, businesses that grow in our town, in our space, in our district, will be future employers. That is, of course, unless one of the businesses decides to buy a complete AI bot that takes about 10 people's jobs. That's another story.
That's an international issue, not just
just to say that all applications are assessed before you decide that you're going to apply. If you're an existing SME and not a startup, you have access from £2,000 to £5,000. And if you are a CIC, social enterprise, or a not-for-profit, and have been active for 12 months more, you can have up to £15,000. So it's quite substantial. And this is all part of a £1.74 million growth fund programme provided by Wychavon. And you might want to use this for, say, buying new equipment, growing your business, employing a new member of staff, and all of that good stuff. And as I say, wychavon.gov.uk/business funding and support. Go and check it out. We also have the Worcestershire Growth Hub. I don't think they're connected. They are connected, but I think they're two separate. They offer two separate things. I think the Growth Hub offers business support, additional grants. So it's worth looking at the Worcestershire Growth Hub as well. But like you've said, Charlie, the main thing is contact the council, get in touch with them at any stage and discuss what your business is about, how they can support. Even if you don't need the support right now, get in contact with them. They may be able to help point you in the right direction, connect you with other businesses. And, and I think that gets missed sometimes because the council can be just, that place where everyone likes to moan and say they're taking my money. Obviously, what we're doing right now is trying to grow business because it benefits all of us, the town, and particularly this time in when we are facing some national economic issues. And with hospitality in particular, I know there is a lot of focus right now and incoming with hospitality. So that's just something to keep an eye out for.
And we're supporting, aren't we, with payment licenses and things like that to try and help with the offer that those retail business, those sort of food retail businesses have. So
70% payment license subsidy.
Yeah, so do look into that. It's all available again on the Wychavon website.
Yeah, we had a small fire at the Riverside Shopping Centre.
Probably been given more attention than it deserved, but obviously that stuff has to be taken absolutely seriously. It's one of the biggest issues with any sort of building site or anything like that, a building that doesn't have huge occupancy, is always going to be its risk of sort of damage from fire or flooding, all that sort of stuff. I think the one of the massive positives is it's really good to know that if there was a serious incident, we've got a number of fire engines that would attend and support in that way. Ultimately, had there been a larger fire that needed that support to put it out, we would have had hopefully the resources to do that, which is a really, really positive thing. So big up to the fire engine service. I think that was Hereford and Worcester Fire Engine Service. I think the statement that was issued by Wychavon is that it's all been investigated and looked into, and that's what they need to do, isn't it? And
the news reports were saying that it's being suspected as arson. We saw some of the footage that was taken on the day. It looks like a small stairway that doesn't lead to anywhere public at the site. Making an assumption, just looks like there was a small fire in a doorway that was put out. Obviously, investigations are ongoing. Hopefully, we'll find out more on that. But as you say, the main thing is no one was hurt, and it was put out, extinguished very quickly. Whilst we're still talking about emergency services, police, and antisocial behaviour, reporting crime, Charlie and I, over a good number of months now, have been in discussions with Evesham Police, Safer Neighbourhood Team, and District Council Services, connecting all of those together and talking about issues that we hear all the time. We're still evolving with the group, with what we're doing. We won't go into too much detail, but there is one thing that keeps coming up at each meeting, which is data. And do we have enough data to back up what the perception is? And I think this is what's interesting, because I think that the perception is equally as important as what the data is saying. And in order for the data to back up what people genuinely believe and hear and see in the town, whether it's walking past a bench and there's a load of noise going on that's swearing and you may be with your child, that doesn't get reported. I'm not walking past the bench and hearing someone say the F word in front of a 3-year-old and then picking up the phone to the police and saying, "You'll never guess what they just said." It's a moment that goes unreported. And really, I should be picking up the phone. I should be finding a way to contact and say that there is a lot of louty behaviour going on in that instance, because then the police would do something about it. So what do you reckon to all of that?
Well, I think in terms of the data, and I think the police are really, those meetings have been really informative, really, really proactive. And I think it's like, but what it comes down to is that the police service, like most services these days, is an intelligent-led service. And in terms of, it needs to have the data to inform the decisions it makes strategically and where it's going to spend its time. What's clear is, as district councillors, I think we get told a lot about the behaviours that people see or things that happen that go on in the town, which absolutely are not right. They do cause sometimes intimidation. They don't make for a nice atmosphere, and they're wrong. All too often, the first thing I always say is, have you reported it? And all too often people say no. And I think I understand some of the reasons why people might say no and haven't reported it. I think like not being not wanting to be like cause an inconvenience or be a nuisance, or you go back to sort of preschool in that sort of telltale sort of scenario. But the reality is nothing will change unless the police are aware of it. One, so that they might come and take some action there and then, but two, so it sits somewhere and it sort of informs decisions in the future that actually helps them to go, all right, well, we really know that possibly on a Wednesday afternoon, there's a serious issue in Bridge Street. There isn't a serious issue on Wednesdays afternoons, as far as I know. That's
hypothesizing.
Having chatted with the inspector and the sergeant there and stuff like that, there are a number of ways to report things. They don't always have to be about calling 999 or the 101 number. They can, there's other systems in place. I think you've got them listed, Craig, but we can obviously also put them in the comments. But the point is even if it's 24 hours later, and even if you haven't got all the information, just report it. If you think it was wrong, if you felt like it created a sort of intimidating atmosphere. Anecdotally, I got told by a resident the other day about how they'd witnessed an older lady that was crossing the road in the park, and sort of it was a group of young kids, teenager type age, sort of 13, 14, and they weren't doing anything like sort of aggressively, but they were sort of almost being inconvenienced to this lady, and just kept, every time she crossed to get around them, they'd move over to the other side. I think that's just, there's something about that sort of behavior that really unsettles me, and I would never want anyone to think or feel unsafe. Ultimately, I'm sure that most people feel quite safe in their town. I think that we can be, can be confident of that. But if there's an incident where you don't, and that's the point, is you're not trying to pass a test on this. If it made you feel uncomfortable, if it made you feel threatened or intimidated, or you just didn't think it was right, report it. Report it, because it's then let the police decide whether, how is that just information? Is it evidence? Is it something we need to act on immediately? Just let them decide, but report it. Because
Yeah.
I think it's a national issue. You speak to most people, they'll say the same things in lots of different towns, and the police officers will say the same things. The challenge will always be this: one is the perception. So a problem sometimes seems bigger than it is, or just not liking something sometimes isn't enough for it to be illegal or stuff like that. But equally, the fact that things do happen and then go unreported because people just don't feel like all those reasons that we've just given, they don't report it, then has this disconnect when we actually go and say, right, well, there's a problem here. And they'll go, well, we can't make these decisions unless the data helps us to inform those decisions. And I think that's a fair pushback. It's a really fair pushback, because otherwise the police would be be here, there and everywhere, acting on all manner of things. Ultimately.
I mean, the police and everybody in that room is aware that there is obviously a perception that also needs to be addressed. It's obviously just trying to find the right way to tackle it. And I think
Absolutely.
the one thing that we discussed after these meetings is that reporting, as we've said, will bring light onto these moments. We're not talking about situations that are like life threatening, and we don't want to be taking any resource away from
anything
that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the other thing. So don't, if you see something really bad, call 999 there and then. And if you don't feel safe doing it, go and get around the corner and then do it. Don't feel like you need to stand there and be an observer to something that could be awful.
Yeah, be safe.
I mean, it goes without saying, and I'm not trying to teach people how to suck eggs, but I do also get that people don't want to put themselves in, if you see a situation where there's some aggressors, you certainly don't want to then be seen to be on the telephone to the police, sort of telling the police about it, because you're kind of putting yourself potentially in the direct.
I have a number of people mention how they've, seen a drug deal go on, and they'll mention it to me. Oh, that particular road, there's always a drug deal going on that road. Did you report it then? Have you reported that? Well, no, but it always happens. And you're like, okay, well, if you reported it every time it happened, which I know is an inconvenience to you as somebody that's in that situation at that time, you've got to go through the situation, picking up the phone and what have you, or sending an email. But obviously the police can then start to focus on that area, and hopefully we should start to see over time those instances disappear, because it's all about intelligence. And there's a number of ways that you can contact your police. So as I say, we've got them listed here. So obviously you've got 999 if it's an emergency, straight up, call 999, get safe. 101 via the phone is a way to speak to somebody on the phone. That's generally for reporting matters that aren't urgent. If you've seen something happen that, even antisocial behaviour, anything like that, you can report it by 101. The form online, which is 101 online, is quite long, and I think it puts people off. I've reported a number of things on there, and you get halfway through it and you're like, God, it's asking for a lot of information when I just want to report that one particular instance. But do persevere with that, because that is equally as important. There is another way. We've got the Safer Neighbourhood Teams, which is a division of the police which focus on particular areas in the rural north, the rural south, in the town centre, and they're dedicated officers that deal with situations such as antisocial behaviour, thefts and what have you. And you can email them, and we'll put a link to their email addresses, or a link to where you can find those email addresses below, because you can email your SNT team. There is also a intelligence submission link, which is something that was new to me, and we'll put that in the comments as well. But that is if you want to contact the police about something else. You wouldn't necessarily have a response from it, but if you saw something like a drug deal going on, or something that you just want to get it involved,
sort of stuff.
Yeah, you can go onto that link, fill a form in, and send it.
And that could be like some people acting strange in a residential area, and you never know. That could be the thing. It could be a burglary that's been reported up the road that you would never know about, and equally that sort of intelligence then potentially leads to an arrest. So it is about that sort of being vigilant and just I was trying.
I remember when I was a kid, I was walking past a couple of guys. They looked really shifty, and they were taking number plates off the back of their car. And I was like, that looks dodgy. That looks dodgy. And I went home and I said, just saw these two guys like taking number plates off their car. But Dad was like, well, report it then. And I was like, okay. I mean, how old am I now? Like, 13, something like that. And I called 101 and I said, "This is number plate." Because in my head, they were gangsters. Do you know what I mean? They were like doing something really dodgy, and they were probably just swapping the number plate on their car because they probably just put a private plate on it. But, in my head that night, I'd solved a massive crime.
But you never know that. And that's the thing. And I think that, the police, again, with that sort of stuff is they're specialists at sifting through things, ultimately. And also, I guess they've got an intuition that means that, they would do something. But yeah, if you see something you don't like, report it. Be Craig. Be that 13-year-old Craig.
Yeah. Get some stick for that one. I've never said that story out loud until now. I felt compelled
now
to
they're
tell
going to know who you are.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
they're going to find you.
Have to go into like witness protection. So yeah, report it, as Charlie says. Very quickly, because we're running out of time, we've got LGR, Local Government Review. You may have seen this banded around, which is all about how with Wychavon and all these other district councils and Worcestershire County Council are going to dissolve, and we're going to form one new council in 2028. What are we finding out about that?
Well, so we're being told the announcement will be next week. So week commencing the 13th. So we're going to find out, basically, are we one or two authorities in Worcestershire? So big news, and it's hard. I mean, I find it quite interesting and stuff like that. But then I'm a widow that also stood to be a politician, and
you were there at the age of 26, so yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, there's lots of things. But ultimately, it's if you're a bit of a political nerd, it's really interesting. But the reality is, it's going to impact every single one of us as a resident of Worcestershire, and it matters. It really matters. So it will be. We will wait with bated breath. I think this is, I think the case for certainly for two has been made really, really well and very strongly. And we're not alone in that sort of proposition that's been presented, in other parts of the country where maybe a north-south or different sort of makeups, So it's an opportunity. It's a once in a generational shift, I guess, where we'll see local government change, hopefully for the better.
And Wychavon's been about for 50 years or so?
50 years, yeah.
50 years. So my opinion is whatever we're building next needs to last another 50 plus years.
At least,
and, and it needs to work for everybody.
And, with the new Prime Minister, well, I say the new Prime Minister, it looks likely that the new Prime Minister is somebody that is, born of the devolution sort of the age, really. I mean, he's been Mayor of Manchester and all that sort of stuff. And what he does say about it is that decisions should be made locally. And I have to be honest, on some of the stuff that we're dealing with, it should absolutely be made locally. It makes sense. We've got, again, talk about intelligence-led. Nobody knows their areas better than the people that live there, and how to prioritise spending and make sure that things are highlighted and dealt with, hopefully, in effective ways. So it's exciting. It's not going to happen overnight. We get the announcement next week. In terms of the new council actually coming into being, there'll be elections next year, but the actual day when they're sort of running stuff won't be until 2028. There's still some time to go, but it will go very quickly.
Well, yeah, because obviously we've got what would have been the district elections in 2027 May, and they will be replaced with elections for who you want at the new unitary council, which will begin in 2028. And there'll be some sort of shadow council. So current positions for district councillors will last an additional year. It is assumed.
It's assumed, yeah. None of that is a given at the moment, is it? But I think it would be ridiculously expensive, and it would seem ridiculous because there's got to be a year where that other council can get ready. You can't just say like a whole new load of councillors and day one and like everyone's. It's just that's not sensible, and it would be irresponsible as well. But so it seems that will be the most likely. I think there was a bit of hoo-ha about that this year, but that was because there was 2 years still to go. So I could kind of understand that, although I still think probably it would have made more sense economically not to allow that to happen, but it did.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very complicated road to the next council.
But there's a lot of work going on already, and good work. And yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, I personally, I think it's, some people say they wouldn't like it and we should just stay as we are. But I think actually the simplification of local government is actually a good thing, as long as it is actually simplified, and that's where where it's important.
Connecting services is not a bad thing. I mean, the one thing that we come up all the time is that's a county issue.
Yeah, it's difficult.
That's
it's really
a town
tough.
issue, and you're trying to connect, with different officers who will speak to you depending on which department.
And your patch can be like, I've got 2 county councillors in my patch, which kind of makes it quite complicated because neither of them one of them's got quite a big, decent patch, but the other one is sort of just the periphery of their patch, and it's difficult for them to, always have they've got other bigger places which they have to focus on. So it's trying to get their attention and get them to deal with things can be, I'm not saying that they don't, but it's more challenging. So it's been an interesting way forward.
But of course, it will be less representation effectively. I think, speaking not with too much, but I think we're going to end up with a bigger party political system because there'll be less councillors at a bigger authority. So therefore parties will take more precedent. I'm an independent councillor. Charlie's part of a party. He's a Conservative Party member. And so, we end up with...
tell we don't disagree on this. We don't agree on this. I think let's not worry about party politics just yet. Let's worry about what actually... in a way, you're right, but that's more comes down to how things are organised. But it will change things. The reality is that whoever the councillors are, that because ultimately there'll be 2 councillors for every county. For every county council seat, there will be 2 councillors. Basically, that's how it will work initially.
Because the ward will be the county.
Yeah, so that's the proposition, and all this stuff has still got to be determined properly. But that's kind of what they're saying. But that that means you are going to lose half or good chunk of councillors who are there representing, and they are sort of passing up issues and trying to get them highlighted and stuff. So in that respect, I understand. But in another respect, if it means that one person can be responsible for all the services in their ward, and if there's a highway issue or a schools issue or a planning issue, hopefully the interconnectivity of those things means it will simplify how solutions are come to, or that would be my hope of it.
Better results,
Hopefully. Sorry, Craig, just one last thing as well, because it would be remiss of us not to mention it, because we talked about it last time, was shopping centre looking a lot better. We know now they've got sort of regular cleaning going on, but always that tightrope of keeping it clean and tidy versus, literally could be knocking it down in a few months' time. But I know you walked through it the other day and were saying that there's been a vast improvement on.
Sent a nice email, which was good, saying it's been tidied up, which, and then as you said, it's not going to be kept pristine. We're knocking it down, we're spending loads of money on it. But so far as the debris has been cleared up, and it was looking good. Thank you for that. All behind the scenes that got that sorted. We also got the roundhouse, which is very near being
and all that space around it now.
It just looks so diddy, but it looks so great to see.
Oh, it looks great. I love it. I love seeing it. It's just having that space. The Market Square just seems to, well, it obviously has. It's just expanded. Just feels like airy, doesn't it? And just a lovely place to sit in the sun and stuff like that. It
feels really like we got our town back.
A little bit, it does, yeah. It feels like one of the Dementors has sort of been got rid of.
Yeah. One of them.
There's still a number of them to deal with.
Speaking of which, let's end on a load of crap, which is dog crap specifically, because at the last exec board, it was passed that a consultation would go ahead for a dog control order. So basically, a number of years ago, the whole of the district, where you used to get fined for if a dog did this business and you didn't pick it up, there is no fine. There hasn't been a fine for a good many years, surprise to many people. And we want to reinstate that basically. And it means that we've got to put a consultation out. So look out for that, because it's not just about picking up dog poo. It is also about how many dogs can we have on a lead, all of that kind of thing to do with dogs in public spaces. And it might not sound like it's the biggest problem that we have in the district, but believe me, in the small villages, it's all we ever hear about is dogs off leads or dogs, doing the business.
And I think it's also not. It's not also just it's not also about those things. It's also whether you've got the means to do it. So if you've got the means to pick up the mess, if you've got the means to put the dog on the lead, and those are also all enforceable things. So I think it is. There are. Let's be realistic. There are a huge number of dog owners who are completely responsible. They do always do the right things, well-trained dogs. There are a small minority, unfortunately, that ruin it for everybody. And sometimes these orders are they are pointed toward those people. But I think we can all be grateful that we want those things to be dealt with in our community.
It was changed from a national perspective, the way that
Yeah.
these orders were put in place, and obviously it just means more paperwork and more things that the council need to do to implement these things.
It's been good. I mean, it's something you've championed, so well done.
All good stuff. Right, well, thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode with plenty of local government review conversation by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So until then, thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
It's an important and popular fact that things are not always as they seem. Debunking the myths and bringing